What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another day, another dollar. We're going to be breaking down both the ES and the NASDAQ today. We're just going to go over our 30-minute charts as nothing has changed on our daily or weekly or our monthly so far. If you want to have a closer look at those time frames, look at the video I posted yesterday. And I'll go into deeper detail on those larger time frames. Today, we're just going to look at the 30-minute time frame today, our intraday profile, and kind of just break down what occurred today, and then kind of discuss some trades that I took in NASDAQ that worked out well and one trade that did not work out well in my favor. So before I get started, if you guys do not mind, please leave a like down below, comment something if there's anything I could explain better, if there's anything that I can in detail. I don't know. Or even if you took trades today, if you stayed out of it, let me know what you did. Even if you're just somebody on the sideline learning just how to read technical analysis on a 30-minute time frame using profile, just let me know in the comments down below and we'll hop right to it. So as you can see, not a whole lot has changed in our 30-minute time frame as far as balance goes. As far as our daily balance goes, our daily balance in ES, if you're paying attention to my left chart here, our daily balance is that 43.50 down to that 83.25 level. That is our balance area, or the area that we are trading inside of. A whole lot of chop. And whenever a market is in balance or some type of sideways consolidation, we have rules that we like to try to follow, or at least most traders follow. So one of the rules is we get near a balance high, which we did yesterday and today. We get near a balance high today. Don't take it out and roll over and begin to rotate back towards the other end of the balance, where we'll test potentially in the future the 83.25 level, and then below that we would be breaking out of balance, right? So you would look, if you can't take out the upper range of the balance, then you look to rotate to the other end of the balance, right? You just keep kind of ping-ponging inside of here until there's enough data or enough momentum one way or the other to break out. Second rule is you push up to and a little bit through it. You basically stretch the balance, right? So that would mean we get above 43.50 by about 2 to 3 points, don't get anywhere, and roll back over. And then we go and test the downside. Same thing for the downside, right? We get to it, stretch it by 2 or 3 points, and roll back in. And then that would just mean you're going to rotate back to the other side. And then the last rule is we push to, through, and away from it, right? Kind of like egress for OSHA. You push to, through, and away from that area that has been holding so much resistance for us. And so far, that resistance area seems to be anywhere above 38. We have not really enjoyed price there. Anywhere above 45.39, 45.38, price above that just has not been wanting to be accepted so far over the last few trading days. So now we look to see if price begins to get accepted down here at the lower price levels, and if it does, then you could see price continue to drift lower and hit these other destinations, like the low of day at 72.25, afternoon pullback low at 37.75, and the low of day at 44.12.25. Now keep in mind, all of these destinations I have marked on my screen here on the 30-minute ES time frame are back adjusted for the December contract. They are a little bit different if you're looking at the September contract. If you're looking at the September contract, things are a little bit different. Same thing kind of applies to the NASDAQ here. There you got a little bit of a larger range, so I'm gonna kind of zoom this thing out. If you're paying attention to my right hand screen now that has the NASDAQ on it, you can see that they're doing almost the exact same thing, right? They're kind of just chopping around inside of this range, except for their balance is a little bit larger. Their balance high is set 15.710.50, and their balance low is 15.352. So what they do yesterday, they pushed up near their balance high, whereas yesterday we ticked ours in ES. Yesterday, NASDAQ got near their balance high, backed off, and we began rotating and drifting lower towards the other end of the balance. zone or the other end of the consolidation period, right? So same rules apply, right? You're looking to get near it, roll over, push through it, stretch it, or push through and away from it. And all of this basically results in some pretty choppy price action. There isn't a whole lot for us to trade, especially when you have like weird events like the Apple event. You have, economic data that comes out tomorrow. Things kind of like that kind of skew the price action a little bit, and you get these weird spikes like we had in ES today, where just kind of short covering just spikes up there pretty good. But typically, whenever you're in a balance zone or in a rotational period, you tend to get a whole lot of choppiness and sideways or rotational days in the market. And today we kind of had that early on. We pushed down early on in the ES futures contract and SPY. We kind of rotated a little bit towards the low end, took out the previous day's low, got down and tagged that 9Y point of control. And at the beginning, it just seemed like that's all they wanted to do. As they rotated back in and began to grind back up higher, right? We began to grind back up towards the upper end of the trading range, right? And on a normal day, without these spikes, you would probably see us push up, stretch the high of day by a little bit, and then roll back in, and then kind of create these things like Y points of control that we had back here on the 8th, right? We had a 9Y point of control. That just means price 9 times out of 13 time frames traded back and forth through that price point. And usually you can see that on rotational days, especially whenever you're in balance. You can see Y points of control be established. We had one back here, but that got touched. So, as these things are developed and we begin to bring price back to them, we kind of get rid of it as we go along. But you can see today we kind of drifted lower. Sellers were in control early on in the morning, and then we kind of get that short covering rally going into the Apple event for both ES and in the NASDAQ at the time as well. We got that kind of short covering rally. Now, NASDAQ had sets of single prints. They try to go trend down, meaning holding sets of single prints by the literal standpoint of going trend. They had a pretty large set here in C period, and they try to create another in D. Did not hold it as they came back into the range, and then we kind of chopped around in E period, and then finally went up and attempted to fill in the later time frames in the evening, and just kind of eventually grinded back up higher. But they had sellers, really strong early on in the day, as they filled that set of single prints from yesterday, their double distribution, and began to find acceptance in the lower distribution. So they're a little bit of a different story as far as rotation. They really weren't rotational. They were more or less trend down, whereas today SPY was rotational. So after the spike up in, the later time frames, we kind of spiked up, really didn't find much acceptance. A lot of times you look to fade extremes, especially on rotational. Now, this was one heck of an extreme, as the previous high was at 32.50. We rotated up to a high of 39, right? So you might have been better off to see if the next time frame, like let me count these out: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I. All right, H and I. So H period was the one that spiked up higher, and then I period, you can see how we pushed up and could not take out H's high. Now, a lot of times when you're in a balance zone, you don't hold trend very often. Trend is something that holds like some 30% of the time, and it's not something that's very common to hold. So a lot of times you can look to fade the extreme, and in this case, in I period, you could have looked to short against that previous time frame's high. So at 39, you look to short, you're not going to catch the high, so you look to short 37 to come back into 32.50. And then at the time we had a Y point of control here that was established 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 time frames that traded at 25. So, target 1 is going to be that 32.50. Look to short to come back into, and then target 2 is going to be 25. So, you've got some pretty decent risk reward, right? You're not risking a whole lot on the upside, maybe 3 to 4 points on the upside to gain, 3 to, let's just call it 13 points on the downside, right? So, and then eventually this thing kind of just continue to rotate lower overall, but you're not going to catch the whole move. But that just kind of shows you how you could trade a rotational day on a pop up like that. But I did not trade the ES today, as it was a little bit more wacky price action than usual. I did not take any trades based off what I was seeing. I didn't like the range, the volume, the tempo, all that was kind of wacky. So let's go ahead and mark the destinations for today. And then we're going to look at the NASDAQ, which I did trade a little bit more of. I took 3 trades today, 2 in relatively the same area, and then 1 at the low of the day, as I was looking to fade an edge, which I'll explain what that is here in a second. But I was looking to fade an edge that just did not work out in my favor, as I was, kind of looking for this day to kind of remain rotational. But I've, failed to realize that sellers were still relatively strong in the NASDAQ, and I'll show you kind of some telltale signs here in a second. So let's go ahead and mark our high of day here at 39 for the ES. So 45.39 is the high of day. Then we have our low of day. That's all we go out with today. We go out with our low of day and our high of day. No really wide point of control. It's only like 7 wide, so not very wide, wide enough for me to carry forward. And then no afternoon pullback, no afternoon rally high. So only our high and low of day. Low of day being 45.0725, right? Yep, 45.0725 is our low of day. And I'm going to go, actually, after I'm done making this video, I'm going to go buy a new mouse because I'm tired of this one just not working the way I want it to work. Miss my scroll wheel click. Okay, so there we have it. There's our destinations for SPY. All right, so let's go over some scenarios, right? So right now it looks like, since we could not take out the upper end of our balance range, right? Okay. But let's just say I couldn't take out the upper end of the balance range. Let's bring back these destinations. So if we can't take out 39, 43.50, any of those price, so anywhere between 39 and 43.50, we cannot find acceptance of price in that range or above it, then you will continue to drift lower. If you find acceptance below 4,500 or today's low of day at 45.0725, you will look to test that 4,500 level. Below that is a vacuum down to 44.8325, which is our balance low, which you would look to see if you hold. And if you find acceptance below that, you will go to 72.25, and then there's an absolute vacuum down to the afternoon pullback low of 44.3775 from August 25th. So very tight range that we're balancing in here for the for ES. Look to rotate down here towards the 83.25, where you could potentially find some buyers. But if there's enough supply in the market, and if the market deems it right, we will continue to push lower and test these other destinations. Same thing for the upside. If we find acceptance above 39 and 43, you will test. You will get that gap fill at 51.02. And then you have a 12 wide point of control, which acts as a magnet. Price will go see that 45.6225 level if we find acceptance above 39 and 43.50. Now, I know that was a mouthful. Let's go ahead and look at the NASDAQ here, where things were a little bit different today, right? For NASDAQ versus ES. We did have that pop up kind of in the same time frames, H and I, time frames. And the same concept kind of works out here, except for you're looking for an afternoon rally high versus fading the extreme. So after opening up just inside the single prints from yesterday and not finding acceptance in that upper distribution, right? You can see that little volume wedge right here. You can see, that kind of acted as some type of resistance, right? There was a supply up there, as some people will deem it. But the market was just, too long, and we got some liquidation to the downside, right? The market was too long, inventory was too long, and we got some liquidation to the downside. And that's exactly what happened. So after we couldn't find acceptance, basically above 15,653 or 15,650, couldn't find acceptance above that, you rotate down and test the other end of the previous day's range, which was 15, 537.25. And we did that, but in a very, very, good fashion as far as selling goes, right? So we open up, take out A's low, we begin one time framing down. C period takes out B's low, we take out the initial balance low, continue that one time framing down. We now have a set of single prints that we're holding. So sellers have several things in their favor at the time or at the moment. Now I'm going to be discussing my trade here. So if you guys will stick along for my trade discussion and kind of just look at how I highlighted this area. What I have highlighted between 65.32 and 79, or excuse me, 80.25 essentially is where the single prints filled. But in that area is where I began getting involved on the trade. But we did have a rather large set of single prints that got pushed up and filled or began to set at 65, right? That was where they began, and then they filled at 80.25. So we held trend, we had a set of single prints, and we were one time framing down, but the fact that we couldn't hold the second set of single prints after taking out the day's low at 37.25, right? And we kind of shot back in to the range and then kind of took back some more of the single prints because they were rather large. They started at 44. Instead, they pushed up and ate into it, and they began at 65.50. E period was kind of a choppy situation. We began chopping around, but could not push back below 42.25. Okay, keep that in mind. We couldn't push back below this area here at 42.25. So as we were kind of chopping around in this area, I was more or less thinking, all right, since we had that push down in D period, couldn't get very much, couldn't get acceptance below basically 45.30. We couldn't find acceptance below that, and we came back into the previous day's range. Maybe we'll get some short covering rally or some type of short covering, right? The market got too short. Maybe we'll see some covering and this market will grind back up. So my initial thought is, okay, if we take out D's high, I will look to get long to fill the single prints at 80.25. So I began to, as you know, E period was chopping around, I began to buy a position at 45, or excuse me, not 45, excuse me. This is NASDAQ. 15,560 is where I began to get long. And then with the idea that we'd push up and fill into 15,580.25 where the at B's low where the single prints filled. So I was looking for this market to kind of fill where this intraday gap is. So if I just show you and you're paying attention to the right hand side of my screen, you can kind of see how that looks like an intraday gap, right? We have a little bit of a gap here in price action. So my idea was to pop and push up and fill that area. And that's kind of what we did in F period. We pushed up, we took out that 65, that 66 highs right there for those two time frames, for the two 30-minute time frames right there. And we began to get some type of push up. And as we pushed up, I began to get out of my position. I got out of my position at 76, 76.25 exactly. And then the other one was 71 because I was seeing that we couldn't quite fill the single prints and we began to kind of rotate back in. And so I took it off at 71.50. So both of those were very good outs. And one of the things I want to note is on the 1 minute chart. Oh, no, don't want to do that. On the 1 minute chart, if you'll note, as we began to push up, the 144 simple moving average during those time frames, the 144 simple moving average was right here around that 76 level, 77. It was slightly higher. I believe it was like at 78. So I was looking to get out near that. A lot of times, whenever that 144 is there, you tend to find some type of resistance initially the first time round, and it kind of gives you an area to get out of the trade or look to take a trade off of it. So as we began to push up into that, that's why I got out of my trade. And then it gave me a good opportunity. So as we pushed up to, what was it, 72, and then that 76 area is where I got out, or 71 and 76 areas where I got out. I began to, kind of look, all right, we're inside that set of single prints. Maybe we hold the set of single prints, the 144 simple moving averages right here. So I just got out of my long. Let's see how we look and how we're reacting to this area. So I began to observe around the 144 how we were reacting. Each time we kind of bumped our head against it, we really weren't doing a whole lot as far as getting above it. So I got short. Now this was the second trade. I began to get short at 73 to come back in, to just rotate back into around the 65 level, right? So I was looking to get short 73, 74 to rotate back into 65. So I'm playing with 10 points here. And my out was above 80-25. So, about a 1-to-1 ratio. But I hadn't quite set my profit take point. And as I had taken the trade, you can see how we were reacting, kept bumping our head against that 144 simple moving average. And then finally we got a quick liquidation down to 62. And I hadn't quite set my take profit point. So as soon as I see this push down to 62, and we kind of got this candle pushing back up, I got out 63. So I got basically 10 points on a 2-lot there, looking to trade for the short side. Now there was another opportunity to take a short on afternoon rally high setup. Like I said, an H&I period, right? You take the short and I at 610.75 against 615.75 high, and you got a pretty good rotation back down towards the lows. And that's usually what you can see on an afternoon rally high setup, especially when the market is trying to push lower like NASDAQ was. Now, the other trade that I tried getting into was later in the day in J period. I seen that we had pushed down pretty low here against the day's low English. We had pushed down towards the low of day on that liquidation there. And I was more or less seeing that, all right, we had a wide point of control here at 65.50. I want to see if we can rotate back up into the day's range. Now, at the time, we hadn't taken out 15.530 yet. We hadn't taken that price point out yet. And I was looking for us to kind of rotate back up. So we were kind of just holding above 15.530 and just trading between that 30 and 40 level, just kind of consolidating for quite some time. That's ugly. I can show you real quick on the 1 minute chart. This period of consolidation basically is what I'm talking about here, is where I got long. I was looking to get long around this level here. I could see this consolidation and I was like, okay, maybe we don't take out the day's low. We look to rotate back in and kind of create a wide point of control around this 65 level. So I got long. What was the price? 40. I want to say it was right around 43 exactly. So I got long around 43, thinking this market was going to push back up to 65. And then I had my stop below 15,516. I'm just going to start saying 516.75 is where I had my stop. So I was risking a bit, but I was comfortable with fading the edge. I knew, I had to give this market some type of room to breathe. And initially, it looked like it was going to work because once we did take out 30, we kind of pushed down lower a little bit and held the low of day initially. We kind of pushed back up. I could have taken the trade off for a little bit of a loss, but instead I wanted to see us kind of push back up and get into that. Now, one thing I could have noted was the fact that we didn't do it in the time frame that I took the trade in. We didn't get back to 65 in J period, and then that should have been a telltale in K when we got back up against that high of 46.25 here, this 30-minute time frame. Let me get this back larger, but you can see how this time frame at 46.25 didn't get back to 65, and then this time frame at 44.75 high couldn't take out that 46.25 and push back up higher. That should have been my sign to get out of the trade right away. Instead, I held on to my horses and got bucked off at the low of 16.75. So I took the loss there. Pretty hefty loss. Kind of put a damper on the day, but overall ended up on the day. As these two trades that I took early on in the day, helped out a little bit as far as a cushion for the fall. But yeah, we do go out with a double distribution day to the downside for the NASDAQ. So with that long ass rant, And if you're still sticking around, you are an absolute fucking trooper, which I, I highly doubt you've made it this far. But if you did, leave a thumbs up. So let's go ahead and mark our destinations. We'll start with the low of day and then work our way up, because single prints start at the 13 level. So we have 83.75 is our low of day. So keep in mind the NASDAQ is trying to push lower. They started out with higher value today, ended up with overlapping the higher to unchanged, and then went from unchanged value to overlapping to lower value. All right. And the value area being the area that's highlighted in purple, as you can see. Okay. High of day 13, or not high of day, excuse me. Single prints start at 13. So this is where single prints will start. Single print start here. And they fill at, what is this low here? 16.75. 16.75. I wasn't even close with that click. 16.75. And if you did make it to this portion of the video, and if you found, have any questions about what I was explaining on the 30-minute chart here, feel free to ask in the comments down below. I do try to explain my thought process and sometimes go into too much detail or not enough. I don't know. So we have two distributions here. The lower distribution being 513 to 483.75. That is one distribution. The upper distribution being from 16.75 to the high of day up here at 58.75. So a rather large upper distribution. We do go out with an afternoon rally high. We're going and a textbook, because we do have single prints below us. So 15.75 is going to be your afternoon rally high. 615.75 is going to be your afternoon rally high. Okay. So where there are sellers today, we'll look to see if there are sellers there tomorrow if we do push back up to that price range. And then you do have the high of day at 58.75. 58.75. And then we'll go over, scenarios and destinations real quick. Alrighty. So, destinations. For the downside, if we can find acceptance below 15,500, you'll take out today's low at 15,483.75. Look to rotate down to 451.25 low of day. Below that, you have a vacuum down to 15,352, which is your balance low. You'll look to either test it, stretch it, or push to, through, and away from it. Now, for our upside destinations, you'll look to, if you can't find acceptance in the lower distribution and continue to push lower, if you find acceptance above 15,516, you will look to rotate back up to 15,615, right? So basically 100-point range here that you could trade in between and kind of chop in between. Would not be surprised if we found some type of chop prior to CPI tomorrow, especially in this large range here. If we do find acceptance above 15,615, you will look to rotate and take out the day's high at 658. And the next high day target is 696. And then above that, 710.50 is our balance high of day. So with this long ass video, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all enjoyed it. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Wear your hard hats, use stops. Have a wonderful day.